And it is a very good afternoon to you, and welcome again to Your Thought on Heritage Multimedia Television here in United Kingdom. My name is Olayomi Koiki, and this afternoon I will be your host, and we'll be looking at so much conversation. As you all know, when it comes to your thought is different from mine, and likewise, your thought is a complete different thing from what even the heritage multimedia might be. But one thing we try to do is to try to bring that thought together. But we can't do that alone because we also need, the expert in different field of work of life. Today, the 12th of May, 2020. The time exactly is about 1600 hours, and we'll welcome you again to another episode. The last episode was fantastic. If you missed that, you might want to go back to Heritage Multimedia YouTube page or go back to one of our videos where you'll be able to see, that beautiful interview we had with Saguru Maraji. And one thing I remember he said to me on that program was, until we have love, love is the key. Love is the only way to execute so many things. We've seen a lot of incidents around the world. We've seen a lot of things happening, but we must continue to have love in our heart. And this afternoon, I'll be taking you to all the way in Nigeria. Yes, as you all know, Nigeria is one country that a lot of us have different views on. Like I did mention, your thought might be different from my thought. The way I look at Nigeria is completely different from the way somebody else looked at it. How does everyone look at Nigeria of today? As we all could see it, someone from Nigeria will be taking us through that conversation because I won't be able to answer some of those pressing, issues that a lot of you have been asking. But I have with me today Tony Nnadi, and he will be the one to do justice to the conversation. First and foremost, let's say good afternoon, Tony, and welcome to Your Thoughts.
Thank you for having me. Tony Nnadi again, not Tony Nnadi, Tony Nnadi. Right.
Correction there, and I really appreciate you that you will be spending the next an hour with us on Your Thought. Before we go into the deep conversation of today, first and foremost, what is the weather like in Nigeria? Because most of us outside the country, we tend to always look at the weather, but I'm sure there's so much conversation that maybe the weather itself might change on us, like the British weather. What is the weather like in Nigeria?
No, it's a sunny day. We're in the midst of rainy season. There was a little rain in the part of town where I am, in part of Lagos. But the late out of the morning, it's been bright and sunny. So it's a great day.
So when it's raining, that means it's good for the farmers. It's good for the crops. Because I was looking at the National Bureau for Statistics today saying we've spent about 22, trillion naira on food. That means we're eating a lot, but maybe we're not producing enough for so many people because hunger has been one area that so many people have been shouting throughout the COVID-19. First, let us get to know who is Tony.
Tony Nnadi is a legal practitioner, but more importantly, and relating to the subject at hand, Tony Nnadi is the Secretary General of an organization called the Lower Niger Congress. And the Lower Niger Congress is the aggregation of the self-determination initiatives across the eastern half of southern Nigeria. That is, you take the Yoruba out on the western half. The eastern half was could be said to be the former Midwestern region and Eastern region put together. So that's what the Lower Niger territory is. And I'm secretary to an organization called the Lower Niger Congress that aggregates all the self-determination initiatives across the entire territory. All the nationalities, they are cooperating as nationalities, not as states. You have the George, the Ogoni, the Igbo, the Anang, the Efik, Urobo, Ishekiri, all the way to Goja. So it is simply, an ongoing discussion amongst the nationalities of that territory on how to recover their suppressed sovereignties that Nigeria had hijacked all the while. That's what. And then the Lower Niger Congress is also has an outreach arm, because we're dealing with what we're dealing with. Could be summarized to be the aggregating the constitutional grievances from all the sides, instead of waiting for the whole thing to blow out on the streets and become another war. We've been through one before. What we did was to get everybody to come around with their own constitutional grievances. What are those things that made the Igbo younger elements to be waving Biafran flags all over the place? What was the reason for the Ogoni uprising? What was the reason for the wider Niger Delta agitation? They say they didn't know how their oil and gas became the property of people in Kano and Jigawa. So all those things we were able to put together as constitutional questions that could be answered by way of referendums and plebiscites, like it's done in the 21st century across the world. So that's basically what the Lower Niger Congress is doing. In the outreach I'm talking about, because the Constitution is at the center of all of what went wrong with everybody. Every complaint, one constitutional grievance.
Sorry, let me. Sorry to butt in there, and I know there's a lot of fire in you to burn, and like I said, we will determine whether we will see that same weather we saw, like you explained to us, just about the beginning of the show. Once again, good evening to those of you watching us on the thread. We will continue to monitor the comment. You can also do us a favor. Your Thought is one program that will come to you every Tuesday at 1600 hours on Heritage Multimedia. You can also watch the replay on the YouTube. But if you're watching us live, leave your comment, share the page, and let us also know what your thought is on the conversation today. But before I go back to Tony, January 1st, 1914, there was a marriage of a country called Nigeria. And whenever people go into marriage, we've seen it even up to date, even during this COVID-19. Some people were saying, we've had enough of it and let us just, break that marriage. But when you want to break a marriage, it is important that, you look into so many factors. Are children involved? Are house involved? What are the things that involves to attachment of that marriage? Because if you break up a marriage and children are involved, the children might suffer because of the negligence, and that is the reason why it goes back to the court of law where they handle it properly. I would then go back straight to Tony, where we will be looking at this January 1st, 1914. Take us through what happened and why are we all looking at the area of that 1914 till date, because it's a very, very burning issue to the heart and minds of so many people of Nigerian heritage around the world.
Yes, Nigeria, as we all know, was not the project of the constituents, the constituent nationalities. It was purely a British commercial enterprise. They were going around like British, like everybody else at the time. The Spanish, the Portuguese, the French. Everybody was going around looking for what to grab for themselves, and so the British came calling this way, and it was between a combination of force and subterfuge. They managed to get some treaties. The ones that gave them resistance, like the Oba in Benin of the time of Orenwen, he was subdued. He won in the King Jaja in Opobo. They had to find a way to take him to exile. In all of that, they managed to get all kinds of what they call trade treaties and even protection treaties. But it was at the end of the day, it became a matter of being the controllers of that territory. They were going northwards, trying to cover the whole territory. But as they got to the middle section, the Benue, the Kwara, the Lorry Benue axis, there was also another adventurer, the caliphate, the Sokoto caliphate of the time, that had come from the foot of the Futajalon mountains in a jihad. By 1804, they got into the area we call Sokoto today, 1804, and they began to overrun the Hausa territories in the area. So at the time, the British was pushing northwards, trying to get all of what is left outside what the French and the other people had taken. The Germans had taken the Cameroonian side. Then there was this Niger and Chad. The French already took all those places. And as the British were heading northwards, the reason there was still any space untaken in that northward journey was that this caliphate had pushed their way. They were the caliphate, the Fulani jihadists were also making a southward movement, trying to get to the Atlantic waterfront. So they met this British that was coming upwards, and after some skirmishes, they had some little fight, but somehow it dawned on the two that on the two sides that they were just like two robbery gangs going after one target. Instead of fighting to finish, why not you bring what you have, I bring what I have, we put it together so that we can have something to share for all time. That was how that marriage was conceived between these two, and it became what we call the amalgamation of 1914. And so it wasn't the business of it wasn't the consensual agreement of those who found themselves in this union. They just heard about it at the time it was the only part that had anything to do with it was that caliphate that was in discussion with the British Crown all through to when it was announced to the other people. The southern part of the country heard about the plan of the amalgamation on the Boxing Day of December in 1913. 26th of December in 1913, it was a German newspaper that leaked it. At that time, all the processes that spanned over 15, 16 years had been, completed. You remember in the southern part, it was in 1906 that they were able to merge what they had in Colonial of Lagos and the Oil Rivers Protectorate. It became one southern Nigeria in 1906, and then they merged it with what they had in the north by that amalgamation. That's how it came about, and so it was a mass wedding of sorts. And what we have happening in Nigeria now is that everybody's filing for divorce. You see the old flag flying all over the place.
Before we go into, sorry to butt in there, and very good afternoon also all the way from US America, precisely Prince Eze Eyinacho that have also joined us. And those of you on the thread, we say good afternoon and continue to share and let us get your thoughts. We will be picking some of your comments along the line. I've been using the word, we're using the word the marriage, and during this COVID-19, you'll be surprised that as much as people were locked down in their house, there have been more than 10 people that have been killed, and I'm talking about here in United Kingdom for domestic violence. We are now seeing also that is playing out, around the globe, in the country and outside the country, and it also goes back to a union, a marriage. Does it mean that the father did not really hand over the daughter to the husband, or was that a kind of rough? I want us to go into. I know you've been giving us the background from the Sokoto Caliphate, but what is the main cause in terms of this union that you are now saying it is no longer working and it has to be dissolved? But to get to that final stage, but I want us to first understand, for the benefit of our audience that I'm sure are well educated, but they want to know more.
Well, it's not this comparison with analogy with marriage. We are not just making it up. We in the possession of some of the classified colonial record documents that are in the possession of the Lower Niger Congress includes the the telegrams, all kinds of communications between the Home Office of the time and the field officers, Lugard and Harcourt and all that. The Secretary of State, sometime in December, in the dying days of December of 1913, when the information about the amalgamation that was to be announced on the 1st of January 1914 had, become something known to the media of the time, and inquiries were going on. What is this all about? How did it come to having to lump this vast territory of various peoples together? And in response, in trying to shed some light on what was being done, the Secretary for the Colonies of the time, Harcourt, the one after whom Port Harcourt is named, addressed a telegram in which he actually said that the well-behaved northern youth, because the protectorate of northern Nigeria and protectorate of southern Nigeria were like two different countries being operated by the British, all the way to where the amalgamation took place. And even at that point of joining up, they still kept treating that north as a different entity that had to be accommodated in some special way as against the south. And it was Harcourt himself that described the situation as one in which the southern lady of means was being committed to marriage with the northern, the poor but well-behaved youth. That was how he described the northern Nigeria, because these were like two infants. Britain was the adult. These were like two infants. The north being described as the poor husband, and the south as the southern lady of means. And it is in that setting that they began to put in place structures that will put that northern region in charge, the northern protectorate that became northern region, in charge of the union on their behalf, because they knew that at some point they would go. It was the south that challenged them, all the people who fought for independence. Who was it that came from the north? It was a Nohoro, it was a Zikiwe, it was a Pat Macaulay, it was a Osita Aguna, it was a Bolowo. Who did we hear about from the north? And then it became a matter of when independence comes, somebody will have to carry on from where the British will stop. And that was how they did all kinds of gerrymandering and population manipulation to put the power permanently in the hands of their agent and joint venture partner, the caliphate, the Sokoto Caliphate. That's what we're still in. And the big problem that arose is that that Sokoto Caliphate, the civil is like, if we were to summarize the problem that has arisen, it is one of a clash of civilizations. A clash of civilizations. One part embraced Sharia. You remember they came by way of jihad. So that Sharia had been part of what they had, as their preference. And the southern part were Christians and, other local, religion, but basically, we could say predominantly Christian. And so when you have one part embracing Sharia, which required the adherents to kill the non-adherents whom they refer to as infidels, then the same northern Sharia territory also embraced the feudalist worldview. Whereas in the south, to the east, you have the Republican Igbo and all the other people. Then the Yoruba, well, they have their Obas, but you remember the Oyomeshi, there was some serious level of democracy. It's not like the emir that owned everything and could kill anybody. Everybody else was slaves to him. And no, it wasn't so in Yoruba land. So basically in the south, you had various levels of democracy. It wasn't feudalism at all. And so it was between these two extremely opposed civilizations, in which one side has feudalism and Sharia fused together, and the other side Christians who are also Republican and Democrats. Yeah, then how do you make it work? So to date, that northern part tell us to our faces that they are born to rule the rest of us. And we see them, executing the duty of faith they owe to their Sharia to kill the infidel. And so it's become a union of death for the rest of us. We've done everything under the sun to get them to sit down with us to realize that we must, if we have to be in one union, we must all hold human life sacrosanct, and we must all, subscribe to all humans being born equal, all men being born equal, like they would say in the US. But these other people from this other civilization, do not believe that at all. They believe they owe it a duty of faith to kill the rest of the people as infidels. They believe that all men are not born equal, therefore they are born to rule the rest of the people. How do you live with that? That's the source of all the misery. That's the source of all the destabilization. That's the source of all the, everything that went wrong took their roots from there. Because in course of trying to maintain their worldview, to impose their worldview on the rest of us, they impose a constitutional arrangement that have taken us away from where we wish to go as a people. And we're just, thinking backward and backward and backward. And when they've seized all the assets by decrees, in all the years they were in power, all the oil and gas of the eastern part, the port of Lagos, the taxes collected here, everything that, the economic assets are seized by the constitution they imposed by force. And having seized it, now they want to exterminate the owners and become the permanent owners. You see what they've been doing in ethnic cleansing all the while. So we say, look, we've given everything we have also to give up our lives in order to be in one union. We believe it should not be so. So we began to organize, we began to organize, and that's why like I was saying, the LNC had an outreach that went out dealing with all the other parts that were also suffering the same thing. So in the eastern part, we have the Lower Niger Congress. In the Yoruba space, I'm sure you saw in the news of the Yoruba World Congress, the one Professor Banji Akintoye leads. The Yoruba put themselves together. Now in the Middle Belt, that's an interest. That Middle Belt was part of that northern region. But there was something that transpired before the British left. Amadu Bello wanted
sorry to butt you in. Before you go into that, I want to get your own understanding of this man called, Lord Frederick Lugard. Because you're already coming too fast, and I'm still looking at that background, because if we don't understand the background, we will not be able to see what our thoughts are. And I can tell you, there's a lot of comment coming through. We don't even know, what is your stance with the IPOB? It looks like there's so much, agitation left and right, but we'll come into that. But what is your, this man called, Fred Lugard?
Frederick Lugard was basically, he was a pirate. He was a pirate the British Crown decided to put to better use. So they first sent him to India and all kinds of places where they had a colonial, venture going on. And it was when Nigeria had come to where they were now putting it together to become one unit instead of the several units they were managing from the 1860s. You remember the Lagos colony came into being in 1861 when the Suman, Kosoko, and how it all went. And we had the Oil Rivers Protectorate. It was when it was coming down to becoming one union. It was about that period that they had to invite this Lugard, who had become because they drafted him from being a pirate on his own. He was drafted into their military he was commissioned by the crown to now be doing that pirate business. It was basically, criminality to be carried out overseas. That's what it is. So he came in and became the one who had to midwife all of how it had to be done, which was why his principal in London, Harcourt, who was secretary for the colonies, was describing what was going to happen in in January of 1914, as a marriage in which he had sanctioned, and Lugard would perform the ceremony, praying that the union would be constant, and the couples there for all time. So we came to where this Lugard, from the documents again available to the Lower Niger Congress, you could see that all of what we are lamenting now were things that were intended to be so by the Lugard that presided over that abomination. They knew from the first time that it wasn't that oil and water will not mix. Therefore, they put things in place to force the oil to remain with the water, so that if we were talking about the mediocrity that has become the center stage of Nigeria's life today, we have on record, we have evidence in black and white of things they concealed from our fathers, that they lowered the standards for the other side as far back as that time. King's College you could go from your class in King's College to your class in England of a similar school. But when they had to now begin to admit people who were not qualified just because the children of the emir had to be admitted into King's College, they lowered the standards so low that the teachers in King's College began to move away to set up private schools. And whether you talk about corruption of today, there were things contained in the foundation Lugard and his principals laid that made that made room for how the British Crown could cut away the treasuries, whatever was found as treasure here, unchallenged. And so the arrangement was one in which there was the British took their own from source, and the other people who are going to be pretending to be government on ground will take half of whatever is in the treasury to one pocket. That's to one side of the pocket. That's just their own, and the other half will be managed in such a way that it is presented as a public treasury, but basically no difference between how you spend your money and how the public money has to be spent. And that is how it was from those principles, and we have like 10 of them that are documented. It was from those principles of turning things upside down that we got the pillars of what has become constitution for us today. The quota system we have was there from that beginning. The corruption we have was there from the beginning, where the heads of the executive branch could take what they found in the treasury, just like the emir was in charge of everything in his emirate or his kingdom, however it is. So all those things were carefully put in place and transposed further and further to where they became constitutions. So the constitution of the order in council of 1913 that gave birth to the union, the 1922 order in council, the constitutions that came in 1922 and 1946, Richardson, Littleton, and all of Macpherson, all those things were just carrying forward, like the apartheid constitution of South Africa had its principles of master and servant. That's how we got to where we are. So whoever, when you read some of those documents, and in the coming days, we're going to publicize some more of what we found in those classified documents, which by the time we confronted our fathers who went to Lancaster House, who negotiated that independence, the ones who were still alive at the time we were, getting into this task of, retrieving our sovereignties that have been hijacked all this while. They didn't know that that was the kind of union they were signing up to. Enohoro, for instance, you can imagine if Enohoro didn't know, who else will know? We had Bankole Juku that found himself in a war, in a kind of situation that became war. It was when we now began to show them those documents that they saw what led to that war, which if they knew before, there would have been no war. We would have realized that what we had was an incomplete decolonization process. That's what Nigeria is suffering from now, incomplete decolonization. The British just handed us over in 1960 to their local agents, and we went from external colonialism to internal colonialism. It was better when the British were here because they were, at least they had a, Awolowo put it this way. He said he would rather that he the one-eyed man could follow the one with two eyes, but that he will not be led by the blind, the one with no eye at all. That was the kind of thing we found ourselves. Look at the kind of people who have emerged as presidents and heads of state in Nigeria. Which of them can understand what it takes to provide education that can offer skills? Which of them will understand what it will take to generate electricity or transmit? Which of them will understand what it takes to organize a society in the manner we see in the other parts of the world? They are taking us back to Stone Age. And we say we have endured it for over 100 years. There's no reason we should endure it any further, especially now that they've come out to try to impose, their Sharia must now be countrywide. And you could see the killings going on, ethnic cleansing. You see what's going on all over the Middle Belt. They are now saying that the entire territory belongs to them. And when you go to 1960, at the time the British were going, and you heard what Ahmadu Bello was telling his lieutenants in the week of independence, where he was telling them that the new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of their great-grandfather Uthman Dan Fodio, and that on no account should that power equation be allowed to change, that they will use the Middle Belt as a willing tools and the South as conquered territory, never allowing them to rule over the North and never allowing them to have control over their future. When you look at the constitution we have on the table now, you can see that everybody is still playing the role assigned to them. They are the inheritors that claim their lineage to Uthman Dan Fodio and the political science of Ahmadu Bello from that Sharia North. Then you have the willing tools from the Middle Belt. That's why people like Gowon and Danjuma and the rest of them found themselves being the ones to be sent to go and beat down others. And then the South has conquered territory. So if you are a slave, what's the difference between what we have now and what the blacks had in apartheid South Africa? So we say for the same reason, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, Winnie Mandela, and the rest of them, for the same reason they refused to tolerate the apartheid constitution of South Africa, or democracy that is anchored on the constitution of master and servant. For that same reason, the owners of Nigeria, the indigenous nationalities of Nigeria, a clear majority of the whole of the South and the whole of the Middle Belt, because the Middle Belt now realize that they've been part of that slave camp without realizing it. But they've now realized it because of the killings going on. And they are now banding with the rest of the South. So we have the whole of the South and the whole of the Middle Belt, and the alliance is called the MNN Alliance. That MNN means Movement for New Nigeria, which can become Movement for No Nigeria if we can't find common ground. I don't see how I can be in one union with people who owe it a duty of faith to kill me. I don't see how I can be in one union with the people who say to my face that they are born to rule over me. And I've seen them refusing to yield ground on anything at all. So we say, since the union is one of death for us, that union must go down. That constitution that creates the union must go down. We go to referendum before we go to any other thing.
Thank you very much. So quite a lot of comment coming through. We'll be picking those, in just about a few minutes, but we still have, few more from this end that we need to ask. If you've just joined us, this is Heritage Multimedia. Do not just only share, also continue to leave your thought. This program comes to you every Tuesday, and also you can also reach out to us on Heritage Multimedia for all kind of advert or whatever you're planning to do. But one thing is, we will continue to bring you the best of what and how we can move things forward. We don't know it all, and that is why we bring other people that can also join. And don't be surprised, you might also be having Nnadi Kanu on this show anytime soon. We'll be telling you more on that as well. Also, there's a lot happening around the world, but one thing is, if you are just about joining us, this is again your thought on Heritage Multimedia. Continue to share the page and invite your friends as well. I can read all your comments, and I know you want me to ask Tony sort of much question, but we will definitely be unpicking some of those questions, and we will push that to him, because it seems a lot of you wants to know from the one I've got here, maybe LNC merging force with IPOB. We will come to that later, but let me go back to Tony again. Tony, why has this taken so long for what you're saying now? And a lot of agitation that is happening around the country. Why have people been sleeping? I mean, I don't know how long you've been fighting this cause. I've been on your timeline on your Facebook. I'll be picking randomly some of what you've been posting on it. What could be the reason now? I mean, I know there's a reason, but why have we kept quiet on this issue for a very long time?
Well, I've been on it. I've been on it continuously for 21 years. I left the oil industry in 1998 from a senior executive position because I couldn't bear the thought of knowing what I knew and staying on to pursue my own things, and therefore.
Can I ask, before you go forward, sorry to butt in, and maybe if you have been given a kind of oil wealth, you probably we won't be hearing your voice today. Maybe there was something that went wrong in that, when you were working there, you wanted some promotion, you didn't get it, and your anger become a movement now. You were just not getting the opportunity. You saw the money in there, but that money wasn't really reaching you, and you said, you know what, enough of this, and then let me just be on my own.
Far from that. Far from that. At the time I left that job, I could go. First, it wasn't government job. It wasn't NNPC and all of that. It was a servicing company in the upstream. The company I worked for was one of the first indigenous companies that I began to take off jobs from Schlumberger and Halliburton. What we did was the reason Nigeria went to local content, because we showed that we could do. There's no production. There's no offshore production platform Nigeria operates that have not had to go to work in. And at the time I left, to tell you the kind of thing it was, I could go to work in the morning and sign off on $2-3 million worth of transactions for people I will never meet. In 2-3 weeks, they've made profits of $200,000-300,000 of their own. But when that job came to where I saw the documents by which Shell was operating, by which Mobil was operating, for which reason they could be killing the owners, the community people with no consequence, it dawned on me that we were not the owners of this land. And I began to inquire more and more, and now added to what I already knew. I suffered from Nigeria in primary 5. I lost a scholarship in Nigeria on account of the part of the country I came from, primary 5. And I began to ask questions. The answers I got led me to wanting to go deeper into finding more answers. I came to the university from the NDA. I came to the university from the NDA. So I was interested in this subject long before I ended up in law, and then ended up in the oil industry, and then ending up coming back to law so I could have some more time to deal with this matter. I've been on it 21 years. And it wasn't just a matter of standing around. The governments, I attended the inauguration in 1990 in an invitation written in Obasanjo's longhand. But I refuse to have anything. I've never worked for government for one day. I refuse to have anything to do with government that will involve payment of money, even consultancy. And I can assure you, there are many things that had been solutions offered government in the time of confusion, for which I've been handsomely paid. If I wanted any appointment in government, I would have had it since 99. And all the presidents since that time, there's no one of them we hadn't dealt with on a basis of their ministers are not as their ministers don't have the level of access we have. But look at these 200 million people. Where would they go if Tony Nnadi wants to go to make money? What will have happened to the blacks in South Africa if Mandela used his knowledge of law, to go to fend for himself? He was coming from a background that could have made him anything he wanted to be in South Africa. Why did he choose to go to be in prison for 27 years?
Is that the reason why you're calling for a new? Is that the reason why you're calling for a new Nigeria? And that's the reason why you're having, a different view from the Biafra.
Listen. The matter is straightforward. Our sovereignty belongs to us. Even by Section 14(2)(a) of their Constitution, the one of 99, it says sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. That section is an acknowledgement by the framers of that imposed constitution that our sovereignty, it is on account of our sovereignty that we can make any document that will give them power to be government. Now, you come again to the preamble to that constitution, just so that you can understand what the issues are and what must be done to solve it. And if not done, we forget the union. In the preamble to the constitution, it says, we the people, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live together as one indivisible and indissoluble nation, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. It's like the memo and articles of a company. The memo is the one that creates the company. We the people there means the shareholders, the Yoruba that could be control of 55 million people, the Igbo that could be control of 30 million people, the Tib and the Middle Belt that could be control of 40 million people, all of them saying that having discussed among themselves, they now agree to be one in this one country. That is what that first part means. In the second part that says, do hereby give unto ourselves, make and give unto ourselves the following constitution, means the articles. Memo creates the company, ABC, now forming XYZ Limited. The articles is to regulate the relationship between the owners of XYZ Limited. There are two different documents. And so, when in the preamble to the constitution, we have we the people, it means we the Yoruba, we the Ijo, we the Tiv, we the Igbo, we the Fulani, having discussed and agreed amongst ourselves, now submit our lands and our people into this union. The contention the LNC has, for which we went to court with the rest of the alliance, the MNN alliance, in 2007. What we're saying is that our sovereignty have been hijacked and our signature have been put on a document that sign off our sovereignty by a decree that is printed in the document telling the story of how they came about the document. Therefore, there was no meeting. According to what is printed in decree number 24 of 1999, there was no meeting because the author of the constitution of that decree, Absalom Abaka, in error, they published that decree along with the constitution. Let anybody who has any access to, is even on the internet, let us go and see the contents of decree number 24. Is only 2 pages. It won't take you 5 minutes to read. You will see the story as told by the authors that they formed a committee that came back to the Supreme Military Council and that the committee recommended an adoption of the 1979 edition, and they added and subtracted, and that was what they signed into law to become the 1999 Constitution. The bottom line of it is that that claim that we the people have agreed to be in this union, have agreed to submit our lands and our lives into this union is false. And on that account, this title deed, the sole title document by which the Nigerian union is kept and managed. There are two different things, created and managed. If anything happens to the memo and articles in which it turns out to be a forgery, what will happen to that company? The company is gone. So we are saying that we have done everything humanly possible to call attention to the fact that we had an agreement that we reached, that our fathers reached in Lancaster House in 1959, that took almost 10 years to reach, and the level of autonomy in which the federation was one of Germany and France and Portugal doing European Union. Everybody owned their assets and contributed only 15% of their income or for the upkeep of the center, for the limited roles they assigned the center. Now those things were toppled in 1966. They went to Aburi to try to fix it in 1967. It didn't work, and people just resorted to violence, killing 3.5 million people from my part of the country. Thereafter, they imposed this constitutional arrangement, unitarism, the one that is one constitution for a federation. Which federation has only one constitution? And so we have been into a situation. The agreement by which we became one union have been toppled, and it is being maintained by brutal force. And our signature have been put on the document that enable all of that. seizing our assets and our assets. I can't generate electricity for myself. I can't do my roads. I can't do. There's nothing I can do for myself. And now they have hijacked that. One section of the country has hijacked the federal government. The federal government is not even the problem now. It is that one ethnic nationality, the Fulani, have hijacked that federal government, and they're operating in the name of that federal government.
We come back to that in a minute. Let me butt in there. My question to you is: your agitation, is this something acceptable to majority of the people? Because I know there's all different forms of agitation, but my question to you is: your agitation, is this something that is acceptable to the majority of the people? If so, people knows what they want.
What we have done, you don't get anywhere with commotion. What you do is you have to define the problem you want to solve. You put it on the table so it can have means of resolution. What we have done, we have the map of Nigeria on the table. We put everybody where they are on the map. The Yoruba, how are you faring? You remember there's some meeting of the nationalities we had to call as the starting point of this entire thing. So it wasn't just agitation. It was a matter of reworking the union. You remember Pronaco? You remember there was Pronaco in 2005, 2006? You remember? Are you aware that of the conference of the nationalities that happened in 2005, 2006, involving all the nationalities? At the time, we had come to the conclusion that we needed to rework the union back to what can work for everybody, and we were lucky. It was a Nohoro that convened. Shoyinka was part of the convening. Juku was part of the convening. Belko Ransom Kuti brought the civil society people. We called a meeting after waiting for so many years for government. We then decided, as the owners of Nigeria, the nationalities who own the territories that became Nigeria, to call a meeting like a shareholders meeting to decide the affairs of that company, to decide the future of that company. And it took 2 years. The US sent us a mission. The European Union sent us a mission. I was secretary of the Harmonization Committee that took the complaints because all the groups who were, these people were already doing their Niger Delta volunteer force. We persuaded all the groups that had arms, Gani Adams and his OPC, who was Rika and his Mazop. We persuaded all of them to please put their guns aside and come forward to discuss with the rest of the country for how we could return equity to the country. And they came. And after 2 years of examining everybody's complaints, we reached resolutions on all the matters to say that what has gone wrong is that the autonomy that was agreed as basis of the union have been truncated, and that's why everybody's complaining. Ijo, why are you shooting at Shell? Ijo says, we don't know how we lost our oil and gas. You go back to the books, you will see the point at which it was lost. All the assets belong to each of the regions at the time. But by the time they began to take them by decree from 1966, everybody lost everything. So the agitation in Niger Delta is for them to recover their own. It's a constitutional question, so we had to find a way to bring it to the table for other people to see with them and know where to meet them halfway. Gani Adams, why did you go to procure arms? Oh, I don't understand why the internal security of Yoruba land will be left in the hands of people who do not wish us well. That was his answer. These were now the kind of questions and answers that were happening between us and those people who were doing the agitations at the time. By the time we were concluding this conference, pro-national organization conference in 2006, we had a draft constitution that would have taken Nigeria back to becoming a federation. But the same people who had, passed Sharia, those 12 contiguous states of the far north that begins from Sokoto and ends in Borno, those 12 states had imposed Sharia, and instead of listening to the rest of the people who were complaining about their excesses, they were already killing people because of Sharia. They were insisting that they were born to rule others and holding on to their feudalism. Look at what has come out of it now, the Almajiri, because between Sharia and feudalism, you can only get millions of Almajiris. People who will not go to school. Your own children will go to Harvard and Oxford, and the rest of the children will have to go and beg. And you think it will remain like that for all times? The day will come when they will come for you. So the problems were spread all across. And what we did, we have a majority now. We have a majority now because we have managed to get them to bring all their grievances. And we agreed amongst ourselves, even far back in 2005 at that time, to say that if we all agree, and for some reason a small section do not come along, then we will have to draw the line so that they can go back to their stone.
Can I ask you this question, Tony? Let me butt in there. Yeah.
No, one moment. Buhari was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that conference. There's nothing I'm talking about now that had not been discussed eyeball to eyeball with him. The one that is Sultan in Sokoto now was one of the delegates from one of the Fulani delegates. He's alive. Ask him whether he did not come. We agreed on everything, and halfway they pulled back. They began to look for how to get to power. They began to form Boko Haram and all of what is. Now they have the power. But the people of Nigeria are with them and their brigandage. And so we say we must now do what South Africa did in 1990 to get back to the people. This constitution is dead. It can no longer be the basis of the union. You saw the solemn assemblies. You saw the Yoruba solemn assembly in 2017 in Ibadan. I'm sure you saw it. Where the Yoruba say this constitution can no longer remain the basis of the union. In 2015, that had been done in the eastern part. In 2018, the people. So we have a majority now of the whole of the South and the whole of the Middle Belt that had banded together as three blocks. Everybody with their hands, so that if we cannot agree with them, go to referendum, and we do not need a meeting. We do not need any meeting. We've been waiting for sovereign meeting. The government refused. The people did one. The government abandoned it and proceeded with the brigandage.
Can I come in there now? Thank you very much and once again, if you've just joined us, this is Your Thought on Heritage Multimedia Television, where we're going to be bringing you, different individuals, because look, your thought is different from Tony thought, but I believe that, sometimes on the round table, you will have different people that have different opinion, but I believe also that we also must allow freedom of expression, and we've been reading so many of your comments. Continue to put those comments through, but all you need to understand is your thought might also be the same thought with Tony. And this will now take me back to Tony to ask you this question. I want you to look into my eyes and tell me that you are not fighting for your own advantage.
I have no reason. If I go back to the oil, if I put this thing, if I put this campaign aside today, if I put it aside for even 6 months, there are several things I could do to earn a decent living. I could go back to the oil industry. I know my ways around it enough to make any amount of money anybody can make in it. If I go back to the practice, there are few lawyers left in Nigeria who can stand on the other side when I'm on one side of a matter. I'm not boasting. But if it's a matter of what I get for it, for I'm the one spending. If I recover 10% of hard-earned money that I've committed to this, because it's not the politicians who are sharing Nigeria's money that will find. How do you finance all of what we are doing? That's all of what we are doing since 21 years. Is it the people that are asking to give up their advantage that were financing us, or how did it happen? Or have you ever had money? So I can assure you, it is not. There's nothing that I can get that I will not get triple, quadruple if I were to leave it.
Thank you very much. Once again, if you just join us,
make your research. Yeah. Make your research. Just search. Click Tony Nnadi. Make your research. You're going to find the answer to your question.
Well, we will definitely do. Let's quickly now pick some of the comments. I know there's still a lot that we want to discuss. Once again, if you've just joined us, this is Your Thought on Heritage Multimedia. Do also remember, not just like this particular program, also subscribe, because you might come up and wake up one day and you never know who will be the next person sitting on the other side of the globe. We still have with us on this very good afternoon, all the way from Nigeria, Tony, and he's been giving us his own thought on the situation of 1914. We all have a marriage, but sometimes that marriage must have had a kind of foundation, and that foundation needs to be reviewed. And like I did mention, we could have also very soon on this platform, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and likewise all other guests that we're working on as well. I'm going to now quickly pick some of your comments. Those of you that have been leaving quite a number of them. I mean, we already have almost 139 comments in the space of less than 40 minutes that we started this conversation. Let me first go to one coming from Prince Eze Eyinacho. There is no union fracture called Nigeria. What we have is a false enterprise put together by Britain to produce malfunction on a permanent basis. It is not a country. It was never and can never be a country. I hope you've taken note of that. And I'm going to take one more and come back again to you, Tony. Also, Anton Jesu said, Mr. Tony, we have all been wounded badly. One Nigeria is no longer an option. And also I have Uche Chuku. The sound quality from Tony's end should be fixed, please. I'm sure the engineer are working behind that. They're complaining about the sound quality. Please do let us know if you're getting any feedback in terms of the sound quality. There's also one more that I will pick and then I will come back to you. Someone says, Grace Emmy, then work with IPOP and be one. Why are you not working together with the IPOP? I'll go back again to you, Mr. Tony.
Yes, the Lower Niger Congress, like I told you, is the aggregation of all the self-determination initiatives across that whole territory. The Igbo side, the Ijaw side, the Ogoni side, all of whatever you have in southern Nigeria outside Yoruba land. Now, the Lower Niger Congress went to the leaderships of every one identifiable self-determination platform that existed, including the one of IPOP. I had a meeting of 4 hours in 2013 in Lagos with Nnamdi Kanu, with nobody else present. Just as we had gone with Uwazurike, Asari, Benjamin Omuka, all of those, including the ones overseas. We put this matter on the table, say, gentlemen, what we are talking about here, what is it you are pursuing? What is it that you want to see? They said they want Biafra. I say, do you have a map of the territory that you want independence for? Where it begins and where it ends? No such map. The moment you use the word Biafra, it presupposes the inclusion of Ijaw, Anang, Ogoni, Efik, all of them in that flank. If you have not discussed with them and you go and sit in London and broadcast to them that you are restoring Biafra, and suddenly you're supreme leader of it, and you have a Igbo deputy supreme leader, all your principal officers are, we told them, look, it is self-determination. It is self-determination that is called. There must be a process to it. It is the constitution that is standing between us and what you want. It is the constitution imposed that made us slaves in this place. And therefore, the LNC is approaching it from an angle of strategy, an angle of process, an angle of reality, to say we must have something that will lead to the point at which our people will be voting in the referendum. Nnamdi rejected everything. There were 8 points of what we said needed to be in place if we are discussing self-determination. There must be a map to it. There must be an understanding with all the groups that are in the territory, which the LNC spent 6 years doing before we even, I'm sure you saw one video in which Asari was talking about being a part of the formation of LNC. And from there we said, there must be a strategy for how this constitution that was an apartheid constitution will be taken down. He said to me, everybody knows where Biafra is. That was his answer to the matter of definite map. In the matter of what is your new discussion with the Anang, the Efik, the Eastern minorities, so-called, who did not go with the Biafra of 1967 for whatever reason, right or wrong? Never meeting them to discuss anything with them, but you are proclaiming to them. You know his answer to me? He said to me that that those people don't understand what we are discussing, that when we begin to do Biafra, they will come and join. I said to him, the constitution by which Nigeria is prevailing is owning and controlling the territory. What's your strategy for taking it out? Because as long as that constitution is in place, elections will happen every 4 years. The outside world will think we're in a democracy, whereas we're not. You know what he answered me? He said to me that I'm still discussing the constitution of Nigeria, that he is talking about Biafra. Meaning that he doesn't know that it is the constitution that is standing, the constitution of Nigeria that is standing between him and that objective. How will this matter be? You're organizing protests and all kinds of things. How will this matter be consummated, assuming you are going to succeed? We have a plan that, yes, we have a plan that is tailored to end in referendum. And that is why we had to go to all the units in the land, and we went to the UN to find out how exactly we will fit into the entire thing. And all these things were shared, most of those things in confidence at the time, to say this is how we have to do it, to the point where people should go to vote. If our people get to vote in a referendum and they say they want to remain in that union, all well and good. But
let me quickly butt in there before you go further. Do you, I mean, we don't have referendum in this constitution that we have present, I believe so. So
we do not
how
need,
would that...
We do not, your question is wrong in itself. It's like going to ask Mandela or Oliver Tambo a question about what is not written into apartheid they want. We are saying that the constitution is a fraud. We're insisting that it has been tolerated for too long and it must now go down.
So I'll let you go back to that conversation. How do you now dissolve this constitution to achieve that aim?
You say what?
How would you dissolve this present constitution that you've been calling, is not the right constitution? That constitution, was not the constitution, that is meant to be for the purpose. How do you take off this constitution completely to get to, again, this conversation that you said you had with, Nnamdi Kanu? You did talk about the constitution, but the constitution is still being used at the moment. How do you take away that constitution to get back to what you're asking for?
We're not, the right to self-determination is inalienable. Your fundamental human right. It doesn't depend on whether Buhari likes it or not. Your fundamental human right is your fundamental human right. If the country subscribes, that's it. It doesn't depend on anybody. Therefore, the right to self-determination, especially as elevated in 2007, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, I want you to listen carefully to this. The indigenous peoples, that right to self-determination, by that instrument of the UN, you are entitled to be in your space if you're a distinct nationality on your ancestral space. If you are a distinct nationality on your ancestral space, the Yoruba is a distinct nationality in the ancestral space. Therefore, they're entitled. Ogoni, as small as they are a distinct group ancestral space. Therefore, what we are saying is that those various nationalities that qualify, what the LNC has done through the MNN outreach is to aggregate them into formations. Was it not by proclamation that Nigeria came into being in 1914, when the crown was sitting on our sovereignty? What we are saying today is that on account of our sovereignty, as a majority, we can say that we are no longer bound by that constitution, and we have done it on a scale that the international community took note. You saw, what do you think the Yoruba went out to do on the 7th of September at Adama Sigma Stadium in Ibadan? Was it not that they said that that constitution is no longer tolerable to them as basis of the union, that they would rather find their way out of the place that is choking them? The same way we did in the East, all the nationalities coming to Port Harcourt to say that this constitution is not acceptable to us. If 3/4 of the country, if the matter go to referendum today, it cannot be less than 75–80% of the country saying, let us do away with it. If our signature was forged and put on a document, and we have taken all these processes to make sure it doesn't become, anarchy, and some people, a minority, because they are holding on to gun, sit on one side to say, oh, all of you, we will overrun you. If you talk, we kill you. They need to go to look for guns to buy. That constitution must. That constitution, the owners of the enterprise, the owners of Nigeria, the indigenous nationalities that have organized themselves, are saying no more business under that constitution. If anybody is mad enough to be thinking of going to another election in 2023 under that constitution, imagine I asked you a question back. Was it by going to kneel down in Pretoria and begging the Boers that South African constitution, apartheid constitution, was taken down? Something took it down. The owners of the land refused.
So what? 80 years. Okay. This is quite an. The question to you is, let's now. I still have a lot of comment, but I'll go back to that in a minute. Once again, this is your thought on Heritage Multimedia, and time now is exactly 7 minutes past 1700 hours. And as you can see, Tony is in Nigeria, and a lot of people are even saying whether we will have your debate, if we can get through very soon with you and Nnamdi Kanu, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, but we will work on that. But the solution.
I will consider that an insult. The fellow is a criminal that came to make profit in this venture. Nothing less.
Why do you consider that an insult?
He does not. I call it an insult because if I were to ask you what it is, if I were to ask you to explain what it is he's looking for, if I were to ask you,
he's looking. Okay, I'll let you land. Yeah.
If I were to break down this question, that one question into 8, if you were the one that would take him to the UN today, assuming the UN knows you and wants to deal with you, say, look, that's your friend, bring him. What is the first question you're going to answer in the place? Is it not the exact territory that you seek independence for? None of those 42 organizations that LNC talked with has a map that defines the territory they want independence for. Not one of them. And I'm not telling you what somebody else told me. I'm telling you what transpired between we and them, eyeball to eyeball. Second, none of them had gone to sit down with the owners of those various places who are entitled to self-determination just like them. The LNC had done that. None of them has any plan at all on what will happen to the constitution. The LNC with his associate had called a meeting of the owners of Nigeria that decided an alternative constitution. I was also the secretary of the committee that drafted the constitution that came out from Pronaco that would have taken us back to what we abandoned in Aburi, which everybody is looking for now. Having done all of that, we then went to court in 2007 to put a process to it, to say, look, we're not anarchists. Court, from what we have inside this document, it is self-evident that we did not make it, and therefore the union has become a fraud against us. And all of those who are swearing to defend that constitution are committing treason against the rest of us. If we allow the angry people, we are the ones standing between the millions of angry young people and the actions they could have taken to liberate themselves from.
Let me get this clear. So what you're saying is, based on what Nnamdi Kanu is doing, from what you've just analyzed to me right now, and with his own message, is that not the same kind of message that you are also? The message is this: the message is that the country is not working, and they want the Biafra. And you are also saying the constitution and the sovereignty. Yeah.
They want Biafra. Now, you say you want something. You are in a prison compound with a whole number of people. The Yoruba also want out. Now, I'm sure you saw what happened, what Professor Akintoye and the Yoruba World Congress is saying. Yoruba want out.
I saw that, yes.
The Ijaw are fed up. The Ogoni are fed up. The Middle Belt more fed up. There's nobody that wants to be in the union of death. And if you say you want Biafra, and you don't care how it can be attained, another organization puts a plan on the table that takes down the constitution that is the prison holding you, so that everybody can go at least go to referendum to decide whether you want to carry on or not. All the 75% of the work, these are the reason I call them criminals. We already categorized them as the globe.
We have a caller. Let's. Sorry to put you. We have a caller now on the line that will want to also join the conversation, and let's go straight to him. Hello, good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, caller.
Yes. Good afternoon, caller. Are you still there?
Mr. Olayomi Koiki.
Yes, good afternoon. Your name and where you're calling from. I know the voice, but for the benefit of those that are watching us from around the world, would you like to quickly introduce yourself, and then let's get your question to Tony. Can he still hear us?
Calling from London.
Okay.
That's my location.
Oh yes, go ahead, please.
Because they tried to kill me after the expose by Tony Nnadi. Now, I'm surprised, Mr. Koiki. I'm forced to break, and I'm angry, and I'm rage that Nigerians can be so daft, and they can be so stupid that they don't know and they cannot differentiate. They can never differentiate their brains. We've got a man, Tony Nnadi, who broke down the problems of your bloody location 9 that was contraption, that was fraudulently amalgamated from 1914 to the whole world. Credit should be given to Tony, in as much as we knew the fraud that was perpetrated on that nasty piece of a country that many people are so proud of Nigeria. Forgive me, I'm not a Nigerian. I'm an Oduduwa man. I'm a Yoruba man. I'm a very proud conservative Yoruba man. I don't want to be a Yoruba man. I mean a Nigerian man. I'm a Yoruba man. Let them keep their Nigeria. Look, Tony, I destroyed my bloody, I don't want to use that word, their passport. Live, I destroyed it online. I burned their passport to send a signal to them that their country is about to be consumed in fire after you made that revelation, because I knew that my father fought for a one Nigeria, and they want to keep me in that contraption that I have been contracted for a long time. It's not going to happen. Anybody on this platform who abuse and accuse Tony of fighting for something that is not justice for Nigeria, let me tell you, go kill yourself if you're not happy. Kill yourself. Tony is the right man. And I see this man in front of your screen today as that man that will liberate you and I. Because he spoke the truth. He brought the truth out. He told everyone the contraption and the fraud that the British perpetrated in Nigeria, fighting from the south to the north. How dare you, Nigerians? How dare you begin to accuse Tony of someone that does not have the interest of Nigeria? If you are one of the Tinubu's, if you are one of the Fulani oligarchs, if you are one of those people that want to subject us, if you are one of those that doesn't want us to be who we are, where Nigeria was molded as a tree nation. Tony, I'm one of your greatest admirers. I never knew you were the one they were bringing on to the show. I knew.
Thank you.
Tony,
Thank you, caller. Let's.
Earlier on today, but I was not. But the moment you came live, I told the CEO of Heritage TV, I knew you, and I am totally in support of you. They should break up Nigeria. I don't believe in Nigeria. My father does not believe in Nigeria. I don't want my own children to be passport of Nigeria. Let's break it up. The time is now. Over to you at the studio.
Well, thank you very much for calling in, Frank Bello, right here in London. I go back to you, Tony. There's quite a lot, comment, flooding through. But I want you to quickly land on the, what we were saying before that call came through.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that you want an outcome. There's you do not have any designs of your own that could ever bring that outcome. None. Then there is a mechanism that can deliver that outcome. You begin to sabotage that mechanism. They use that radio that they should have used to enlighten our people. All those materials you see on Facebook were the things I placed on the table for them to use the radio since 2013. You can see that most of those materials are dated before 2013. And they will not touch it. If we were explaining to our people why they do not have electricity, because it's on the exclusive list, nobody is going to get the electricity as long as it remains on the exclusive list. What was it that Abba Kyari went to do in Germany? You leave electricity on the exclusive list. You go to Germany to get Siemens to come and fix electricity for you. Which investor in his right mind will come to invest in such a thing that is absolutely dependent on the whims and caprices of people in one corner? Whereas if you remove electricity from the exclusive list today, Lagos could generate 40, 50,000 megawatts of electricity in a matter of 2-3 years. Eastern Nigeria does not have, Igbo land today does not have one electric power generation plant, not one. Oji River was there before Nigeria came to disrupt it. Aba died, Onitsha died, Newi died. The only reason we don't have electricity is that electricity is on that exclusive list. The only reason the security is upside down the way it is and people are being murdered all over the place is because arms and ammunition and police, all of them on that exclusive list, 68 items.
Let me come to you, Tony, because time is really fast approaching.
I'm just trying to let you know that those who seek self-determination, that's the language I will stick to. Self-determination. If we were to agree on how everybody will have that self-determination in a union, holding human life sacrosanct and holding all men equal, born equal, there's no reason why we can't have a union. But we're saying that the title document by which Nigeria is holding all of us hostage now is a forgery, cannot remain the basis of the union. There's a majority that is insisting they can't proceed with it. We are the ones organizing them not to get into Somalia kind of settlement. Let us get it step by step to where it becomes referendum. And the first thing that will happen is that no further elections will be tolerated under that constitution. Yes.
So what you're saying,
The first thing that will happen is that majority of the South and Middle Belt already decided that no further elections will be tolerated in their space under that constitution, because the winner of that election will govern with that constitution of master and servant.
Okay, that I think is
those who sit in Abuja and think that our sovereignty have been lost to them, they are going to come face to face with the owners of those sovereignties, because we don't even need a meeting to dissolve the union. If what they are doing, you know, you have a company, your managers, the people you hire to run the company, go to distort your memo and article. They remove your name, put their name. That was what happened to us in 1966. And we've waited since after to say, let us go back and make a union document. The one we made before had been lost. We had 5 constitutions. And people toppled it. The people who did it are still alive.
Can I ask you this question? Because you know, going by the some of the not just only the comment but also what is out there. Do you think there's this disunity between what you are trying to do and also what the agitation from the Biafra? Do you think there's a kind of they will see this big problem ahead? Because if a lot of people thinks, look at you from a different angle and different point, and you've raised so much information, and you've been fighting this cause for the last 21 years. What do you understand by humanity, first and foremost? What do you understand, as humanity of today?
I don't understand the question itself. But let me begin.
Let me rephrase it. A lot of people fight for a reason, and a lot of people, you're out now, right? You were working, and all of a sudden you thought, okay, maybe due to the humanity of the people or for something else. That is the reason why I did ask that question, and I think you understand that the point of the question now.
Yeah, the simple thing I want is for life to be preserved. Life has to be safe wherever, whether you're in Sokoto or you're in Port Harcourt. Hold on.
Okay.
Electricity can be available to all, like it is available to you where you are. Clean water can run in all the kitchens. All those things that the rest of the world are taking for granted, the only reason why we can't take them for granted, the only way they've become unattainable for us is because somebody imposed a system that makes sure that those things, a feudal system which only the emir and his children will be entitled, and they've imposed that feudal system on the rest of the country. That's why I have a governor that is not accountable to me, because the constitution gives him immunity. The constitution gives him the spare key to the treasury in section 122. The constitution gives the president the spare key to your treasury in section 82. And all of them who hold that key to the treasury for their own benefit have immunity. Section 6, section 60, remove the benefits of the citizen from the social contract that the constitution is supposed to be. That section annuls the whole of chapter 2 that spell out all the good things of life. So if they do not, meaning that under this constitution, they do not owe you any obligation. They do not owe you school or hospital or anything at all. They have the spare key to the treasury to take all the things in the place. They have immunity until they leave office. You can't question them. What else are you going to have?
Okay, what else are you going to have? And that takes me to this question. Let me come in there, Tony. I know, like I did mention, we came in with that's why I did ask you the weather, because we might be going out of this conversation with the British weather that a lot of people know. When it rains in the morning, it could be cold in the night, and it could be and sometimes you just have to take the jacket on. Once again, this is your thought, and like I said, our thought really matters. One question, and I want to really, because it's also generating a lot of power. Maybe people don't understand what you're saying. They're looking at it from your thought that is different from their thought. Do you want one Nigeria or a divorce?
I want a divorce at this time. There's nobody alive in Nigeria today. There's nobody alive in Nigeria today that has done 1/4 of what I've done to preserve that union in terms of bringing equity, because the union would die if equity was not brought in. That was what we went to try to restore in Aburi. They came back from Aburi, abandoned it, and began to kill people. Killed 3.5 million from my part. Everybody thought it was only the East that was going to be killed.
I saw some of that video facing out again on the social media last week.
There are people. There was a senator. There was a senator from Eastern Nigeria that was asking, who are these people? Because she never knew that it was that bad. Red Cross is still holding on to the videos they have, the pictures they have. Red Cross once told us that if they release those videos, that they could guarantee that in less than 1 month, nobody will be able to control Nigeria. The reason they banished the teaching of history, you can see, yeah, was it today or yesterday that the Secretary of the Government of Nigeria inaugurated a committee to revive our Jakarta steel. And we had to put it out there to tell them that they are wasting their time. Jakarta was the reward to Russia for helping in the genocide of 3.5 million people. That is what has put that project the way it is. It will never take off. It will never go nowhere. It's sitting on the blood of 3.5 million people. So many things, and I come back to this matter of the people doing Biafra. Listen. Those people who say they are doing Biafra, the only thing we have told all of them, the ones who are genuine, the ones who genuinely were looking for something for everybody, it did not take more than 30 minutes of meeting for them to collapse into what we were doing. They saw a plan that could bring them to referendum in which people will vote in certain formations, whether they want to proceed, because the collapse of the constitution is the end of the union. The collapse of the constitution is the end of the union in Greece. We are not anarchists, therefore we point everybody to South Africa. Was apartheid constitution changed by amendment? And you see lunatics that stand on the floor of the National Assembly of Nigeria to say that the ones who have to make constitution for me. It's like the management of a company you own telling you that you are no longer welcome to, the matter of the memo and article of your company. What will you do with such a people? That's what they are doing. They are committing treason against us, and we are going to ignore them because the sovereignties of the Yoruba is not subjugated to anybody. The sovereignty of the Ijo, the Igbo, the sovereignty of the Tiv, the sovereignty of the Jukun, the sovereignty of the Biram, we have gathered all of them. They have made out their charters and constitutions. There is internal cohesion. All of those who go on that said he went to break Eastern Nigeria in order to prevent them from, he has killed 3.5 million people to keep Nigeria one. Is Nigeria staying one now? And more people sticking to go. What's happening with these Biram people today? Is there anything that is happening now that didn't?
Let's take a pause there for a minute, and let's now take another question from the boss himself in just about a second. Go ahead with the question.
Right.
Tony, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Afternoon.
I have a very lovely question for you. Why will you think people are having a conception about you? They think you want one Nigeria, and you said you want a divorce. What have you done that they have this misconception? And is there a way we can repair this? Because, like a lot of you know, what I want a peace settlement for our people in the South. I don't care about the people in the North, but the people in the South, I want a peace settlement for them so that when they finally get their own country, things will work for them. What can we do? What is there? And why did they have this misconception about you? Over to you in the studio.
The ones who have misconception are criminals who created those misconceptions and sold to other people. They know the truth, but that truth does not permit the franchise they've set up in the name of a sacred Biafra to which our people are prepared to commit anything. They pick up that name and go to defraud people all over the place. Now, are you more Biafran than Ojukwu, who was involved in this settlement plan? Are you more Biafran than Achibe? Are you Biafran than Achuzia? Enohoro was in it. Everybody who had ever fought for any part, the people who are wielding arms in the Niger Delta they saw their own salvation in it. The Yoruba saw their own salvation in it. The Middle Belt, all of those who are being killed now, they saw their salvation in it, because that constitution is what empowers that enemy to decimate all of them. And we have rallied all of them to how we can take down that constitution and come to where we are all voting in referendum to proceed or not to proceed, with a preliminary objection about Sharia. None of them want to have anything to do with people doing with 1 square inch of Sharia in any territory. And thank goodness, the 12 core states that pass Sharia are together on one side. Our interpretation for what they've done, and I'm saying this as a lawyer with specialty in jurisprudence, our interpretation to what they have done is that they have seceded from the secular union we were trying to build. We have no quarrel with them because they've exercised their right to self-determination. Remember, their state assemblies passed the Sharia and their governors signed it into law and set up Hizbah. As far as we are concerned, they are fed up with the secular union of Nigeria and they've exercised their right to self-determination. On account of the fact that the section 10 of this 1999 constitution expressly forbids what they've done, said there shall be no state religion. They consciously did it, and we came back to them to say, look, do you still want to be in this union? And we hitting. It was a delegate from Katsina that moved the motion for the adoption of the finished product from that Pronaco process. So it wasn't something that I've named some of the people that are involved in it. This Yerima Shetima, the one that is saying that there will be war if the South reject the marginaries that they are pouring in scores and scores of trailers into the South. People we don't know where they're coming from. You throw up the borders open and ask all the Fulani from all over the world to come into Nigeria. That you saw the governor in Bauchi saying that Nigeria, that all the Fulani from everywhere in the world, in Africa, are Nigerians. And then you had a Fulani president throwing our borders open for all of them to come in, and you saw them trooping in. Today they are dumping all those people in the southern part of Nigeria. Who knows what their schemes are? So we are not interested in being in a union with people who owe it a duty of faith to kill the rest of us. So that point is a preliminary objection that must be cleared. And then this matter of feudalism, of people thinking that all men are not born equal, therefore they are born to rule. If those two are not settled, there won't even be any basis for any meeting to consider what will happen. As for whether that constitution will go down, it's already gone down. It's already gone. And 3/4 of the country are on one side. If you want to test your might to go and beat them up, I can only wish you good luck. It is that same caliphate that brought ISIS. You saw in 2014 when Boko Haram exchanged and they became ISWAP. And you see what has happened to the sub-region. And we're saying we cannot be in a union with whose sympathies, whose loyalty and allegiance do not lie with the country we thought we were building together. And so all of what we have done is to bring process into the matter. We have brought a process into the matter. We went to the UN long before any one of them realized anything was going on. We went to the UN from the onset to find out how the process can be managed so it doesn't become an anarchy. And everything we've done is according to that process. We want to bring our people to where they are the ones voting in a referendum for whether they want to remain in the union or with who or without who. That is what we are seeking to do. We can't arrogate to ourselves that this is what our people want. It has to go to a referendum. That is how such things are resolved in the 21st century. All of those people who are pretending they want Biafra, because if we had not engaged them, initially I thought it was a matter of ignorance. But when I had engaged them between the last and the 12 to 15 years, we had engaged every one of the groups, including the one that calls himself a maker, the one that they say is doing mobbing, all of them, without exception. The honest ones amongst them, the mass-up that you have today, is not the Wazirike's mass-up. Wazirike had stepped away from the mass-up that is on ground, the one that was working with IPOB at the time they were still on the street. But when the time came for all of them to be brought into this discussion the second time, because the leaders of those organizations over the years had evolved, had moved on, and other people took over. We again came back to say to them, at the time, in that 2015 that they gathered on the street, we came to explain to them. It was actually that called all of them. Everybody accepted what we proposed as the process to get to the destination they seek, to get to referendum. That's how far I'm prepared to go. Two items. Okay. This constitution cannot remain the basis of Nigeria. Second, referendums will have to take place for people to commit or not to commit. If no meeting is called, I can assure you that the default is that the defunct Federation of Nigeria will fall into its natural path. All the documents that will make it happen are already in place. You saw the Yoruba going to the UN with their own. The East is ready, the Middle Belt is ready, and it's not a matter for the kind of fight of go and shoot gun. No. The whole of last year, from January to the end of July, the United States was busy interrogating this same question.